All right, folks, so we are back, I think. And the reason I say I think is because, as you know, the past week we've been having pretty rampant internet problems. You know, it cuts in and out. We had a guy come over. He said he fixed the internet. He figured out what was wrong, and he didn't fix it. It didn't do anything, literally, okay? So, you know, that happened. And then I had someone come over today, and once again, like, literally, they've just resorted to this point. They don't know what's wrong. Okay, they're just not giving me an answer. I'm like, what's wrong with the internet? Oh, we don't know. We don't know. You're on your own, basically. So considering we are essentially on our own, what I have done, folks, is I bought a cellular hotspot, okay? Now, it's not a good one, but I wanted to stream today because I didn't want to wait all week for a good one to come in the mail. So I went and I bought a rather cheap cellular hotspot from Best Buy today. Hopefully this works. Okay, I tested it out earlier. It seems to work decently. I mean, it's certainly not that fast, not ideally as fast as we would like, but hopefully it gets us through the next few days as we figure out how to actually have functioning internet and connection, because I don't know. Joe Biden, frankly, folks, has attacked the stream, and it is what it is. So it might be a little laggy tonight. You know, if it just starts dropping frames on you, just hit refresh, okay? FYI, if any of that happens, all you got to do on YouTube is hit refresh. I've lowered the bit rate. It should be decent. I don't know. This is a test, okay? Frankly, folks, this is a test stream. We're doing it all together. So let's hope this goes well. All right, folks, tonight on the Vince Dow Show, we got to react to the Tucker Carlson, Viktor Orban interview, and hopefully the Matrix does not attack us once again. That's all coming up. Stay tuned. All right, folks, and we are live tonight from a rainy, hurricane imminent state of Florida. Welcome, everyone, to the Vince Dow Show. It is August 29th, the year of our Lord, 2023, and I am your galaxy-brained host, Vince Dow. As you know, here in Florida, we do have a hurricane coming, which, on that front, okay, we need a name for this year's hurricane before we start the show, okay, chat? I need suggestions, because as you guys know, last year we called it Hurricane Brandon, because that was when, you know, the Brandons, I guess it was 2 years ago, but whatever. We called it Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Brandon, and that was the thing. We need the year for this, we need the channel name for this year's hurricane, because, what is it called? Idalagugu, whatever. That's a stupid name, okay? So what should it be this year? We need suggestions. Should it just be Hurricane Brandon 2? We could do that. Or we could come up with a new name like Hurricane Viktor Shi, Hurricane Kamala, Hurricane... I don't like, we need a name for the hurricane this year. So let me know what you think the hurricane name should be. Be sure to leave a like on the stream right now. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And as usual, folks, if you do want to support us tonight by super chatting the show, it is, of course, greatly appreciated. And we will read your super chats at all and any opportunistic times in the stream to do so. In fact, we got one right now, right off the gate here. Dollar for $2, says Vince, can you do a Discord tonight or tomorrow? I don't know. I don't know. I'm probably just going to go to bed after this. Tomorrow, maybe. I don't know how the internet's going to be. So, honestly, I have no idea. I mean, look, you guys can always do one. I mean, I don't have to always be there in the VC for you guys to talk, FYI. But I'll let you know. I don't know. But thank you for the $2, dollar for dollar. Hold on. My microphone keeps freaking doing this, and it's very annoying. Okay, sorry, folks. As you know, it's been a while here, and... you know, the freaking nothing's working ever, and it's honestly very frustrating, but let's see that? It keeps doing that. Okay, with that said, I think we're about ready to formally start the show tonight, but before we do that, let me know, is it laggy? Let me make sure. People are saying no image. Wait, hold on. Let me make sure that the chat's not blowing up saying massive lag, because you're definitely going to get a few drop frames tonight because of the bad connection, but overall it should be decent. It should be decent. People are saying Hurricane de Sanctimonious. That's perfect. That's actually perfect. I think I like that one. Hurricane Hunter, Hurricane Victor Shi. All right, we'll do a poll later tonight figuring out what we're actually going to name the hurricane. But that said, folks, again, if you would like to super chat tonight to support the show, it is, of course, greatly appreciated. And let's get into our programming for tonight. All right, so right off the gate, let me address this. The question of, Vince, why do you and Tucker Carlson care so much about Hungary? Isn't that an Eastern European dictator state? Isn't it probably a very corrupt place run by the mafia? Well, the more you dive into it, you'll find actually that's a very, what you would frankly call a Western American stereotype. That is absolutely not true. And the reason I want to platform Orban tonight and talk about this is because, folks, frankly, I'm here to show people, and I want us all as Americans to recognize this here tonight, that there is actually a better way to live than we are living right now, okay? This false choice that, frankly, in many ways, the political establishment on both the left and the right sells you of, well, you know, you want to live a somewhat better life in a place that isn't so dysfunctional and dangerous? Well, you got to sacrifice your freedom. What, do you want to live in North Korea? I'm here to tell everyone tonight that that is a false dichotomy, that is a false choice between living in a relatively quote-unquote free and open society and also living in a society that is safe, that is functional, that is not constantly on the brink of chaos, and that is a relatively decent and moral place to raise your children and raise a family. You do not have to choose between the two, okay? We, believe it or not, can have cities in this country that are safe and beautiful and show off the glory and grace and power of our civilization without living in some type of Chinese-style Orwellian dictatorship state, okay? We can have a moral society that worships and venerates the very God upon which, you know, our society's foundation was built without living in some type of Handmaid's Tale style theocratic dictatorship where they're like, have surveillance drones, you know, policing, making sure women aren't showing their ankles. This is a false dichotomy. You do not have to choose between the two, okay? And the point here tonight is that you can call this unpatriotic if you want. But look, here's the truth, is that America in many ways is a great place. There are many aspects about America that I wouldn't trade for anything, but I think it's also important to recognize, especially nowadays, even as compared to as people as young as me when we were kids, right? America in many ways has become a dystopian nightmare. This is just true, okay? As much as we want to talk about land of the free, home of the brave, oh, I'm so proud to be an American, courtesy of the red, white, and blue. Do you realize that you can, I mean, think about this for a second. In this country, we cannot walk down the central downtown areas. I'm not talking about the quote-unquote slums, or as we call it here, the hood, right? You cannot walk down a central downtown area of this city without fearing for your life, okay? You cannot take public transit in a historic city of our civilization like New York City or San Francisco without constantly fearing that someone's going to literally take a razor blade and stab you in the face. No exaggeration there. Or push you into the subway track, okay? Meanwhile, you know, we live in a society where multinational corporations, total monopolies, right? They are monopolies, plunder our country of everything, of its soul, of its actual middle class and workforce, of home ownership, of family and everything. And of course, they turn around and tell you, oh, that's just free market capitalism. You don't want to live in a country like that where BlackRock buys up all the real estate and the corporations all, you know, bound together and form trusts and then, you know, destroy your life and trample on everyone. Whoa, what do you want to be, some type of socialist? What, do you want to live in communist China or something? This is all, folks, a lie, okay? That is not freedom, and there is not a false choice between wanting to live in a society with freedom and liberty and also wanting to live in a society with safety and morality, okay? Yet people will often say this. They will say, well, you want to live in a place where you don't get stabbed by razor blades on the subway? So what? You want to live in North Korea, right? And I find very often that we as Americans are so clouded by our hubris that whenever I point to another part of the world where they actually do manage to have a healthy balance of both, right? They're able to both be a free and open society and also be a society that's safe and functional with social trust, with strong families and strong communities, that's not constantly on the brink of mass crime, riots, civil strife, and chaos. We assume in some way, no, they must be the ones that are dystopian, right? I remember a few months ago, I brought up this thought exercise of, you know, with all the wealth and power and money that America has, what's stopping our cities from looking like, let's say, Dubai? And people told me, no, Dubai is an evil, authoritarian dictatorship, don't you know? Even though, like, thousands of Americans and people from all over the world literally vacation there every single day and year. No, it's an authoritarian nightmare, bro. And then I say, okay, well, what about Singapore? What's stopping an American city from being as advanced and as safe and as orderly as Singapore? And people will still stand there. Like, again, by the way, Singapore is not this evil, crazy dictatorship, okay? It's an open society. It's a place you can travel. It's a place you can enjoy. Like, you know what I mean, right? But then same thing people say. They say, well, no, they must be the authoritarian ones, right? Again, meanwhile, of course, we can't walk down streets in our city without getting stabbed and attacked, but we tell ourselves that we are the ones who are free, right? And then very, very funnily, ironically enough, what a lot of people will say in reaction to this interview, I know that because they have said that on both the left and the right with Viktor Orban, is people will say, well, he's a dictator, right? He's a dictator. Because, of course, America definitely does not have dictators. America never rigs elections. And, you know, this is, of course, the case, right? And again, here we go again with the hubris of America, where very often, I think in some ways, we can't admit our own flaws. Because if you look at what recently happened here, okay, as everyone knows, let me just put it this way. If a third world country in their last presidential election, weeks before the presidential election, systematically censored its internet at the direct command of its federal agencies, and systematically changed all of its election laws in every important precinct, weeks before that election, every American would look at that and say that was a rigged election. They would say that's a third world banana republic dictatorship. If that happened in, say, Zimbabwe, right? What would people say? We know exactly what people would say. But that same exact thing happens in America, and yet in our arrogance and hubris, we still tell ourselves no. But it's different because we're America. We're the land of the free. That could never happen here. And surely, if anywhere else is doing stuff better than us, they must be doing it wrong. They must be some type of dictatorship. They must be commies. Of course, the point of tonight, and the reason I'm reacting to Viktor Orban tonight in this Tucker Carlson interview, is to show all of you that that is simply not true, right? Viktor Orban is one of those very leaders. He's a guy who rejects this false dichotomy between living in a free society versus living in a safe and functional and strong society. You don't actually have to choose between the two, okay? And contrary to the lies that people constantly push with absolutely no evidence, he is not a quote-unquote dictator, right? He's a democratically elected leader who is simply beloved by his people. And is America really going to stand here, and say anything on that front, right? But that's exactly our thing, is that when you have a leader who does that, and hence is beloved by the people and very popular in that country, we immediately assume, oh, they must be a dictator of some sort. It must be some type of authoritarian hellscape. Yet anyone who's been to Hungary will tell you that when they walk down the streets of Budapest, you do not witness some type of third world North Korea style surveillance state. In fact, in many regards, you could argue in terms of like your social freedoms, your ability to go around without being constantly surveilled or regulated, right? You could argue in many ways, it's actually a much freer place than the United States, okay? But what you also see at the same time is safety. You see orderliness. You see social stability, okay? And again, the very point of tonight, the reason why we're doing this is, again, to kind of hopefully prove a point to everyone that we as Americans don't have to choose, okay? Don't let the neocons or the neoliberals tell you that things simply have to be this way. And if you don't want things to be this way, oh, you must want to live in some type of authoritarian dictatorship. That's just not true. That's just not true. Believe it or not, we can live in a free and moral society. Okay? And in many ways, I'm not saying Hungary's without their problems. Of course, they have their problems. But in many ways, that's what Viktor Orban here and what he's doing in Hungary represents, which is exactly that, which is that you don't have to, again, choose between the two. Am I saying he's a perfect leader? No. Am I saying that I agree with him on everything? No. But, you know, by the way, it's a different country. They have different problems. They have different social norms. They have a different history than ours. I'm not saying to copy paste every single little thing he does. What I am saying is let him be an example that, again, you do not need to choose between this false dichotomy of free society versus moral and strong and safe society. And with that said, folks, let us get in tonight to the Tucker Carlson, Viktor Orban reaction. I'm going to play it here from Twitter, and hopefully it doesn't get too laggy. If it does get too laggy, I do have a backup file where we can just play it from there. We'll see how the hotspot holds up playing this. But, all right, let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. Here you go. Oh. Well, as I predicted, the Twitter player's not working. So, let's just play from this. I mean, it's going to be a little bit pixely because I've downloaded it in like 360, but it should play fine. So
bad strategy.
Right. The Biden administration described you in the United States in the media as a fascist. Are you worried about being crushed by the United States?
It's dangerous, may I say. I'm not the favorite politicians of the liberals, unfortunately, but nobody is perfect, you know. There are certain things which are more important than me, than my ego. Family, nation, God. Liberal originally meant freedom. But now in Europe, liberal means that you are enemy of the freedom. We are ally to the United States, and we are worse treated than Russia.
If you respect democracy, don't you let countries govern themselves? If you take a step back, the point of NATO is to provoke a war with Russia.
This is a bad strategy. We have to stop it. We cannot beat them. They will not kill their leader. They will never give it up. They will invest more. It's a joke. It's a very dangerous moment now.
That's obvious to you.
Not just for me, everybody on the street. The Third World War knocking on our door.
You were just in an election. Did you consider at any point just indicting your challenger? Wouldn't that have been easier?
To do what's going on now in your country, you know, to use the justice system against the political opponents. In Hungary, I think it's impossible to imagine. That was done by the communists.
As the war in Ukraine completely reshuffles the world order and threatens to destroy human civilization, it's striking.
This is the guy they call a dictator, by the way. Just to give you an idea. Just think about that, okay? According to the U.S. State Department, this guy is like a fascist Nazi dictator.
Just how little information Americans are receiving about what happens there. The nation of Hungary shares a border with Ukraine. Its leader, Viktor Orban, the nation's longest-serving prime minister, has been dealing with the Russians all of his life. He grew up under Russian occupation. As a young man, he was arrested and thrown into jail by Russian-backed police for his efforts to liberate the country. And as prime minister, he's dealt regularly with Vladimir Putin, whose nation supplies Hungary with most of its energy. Viktor Orban understands Russia and Ukraine. So
sorry, I don't want to like pause too much throughout this, but let me just make that point because a lot of neocons have called this guy the same names that the neoliberals do, right? Oh, he's a dictator, he's a fascist, he's not a real conservative, he doesn't respect freedom. Like, what more could you ask of the guy? The guy literally got his start in politics getting arrested by the Soviet Union protesting against communist occupation and Russian occupation there, okay? Like, the guy's everything, like, even the neocons who call him all these names, you would think he should be. But because, I don't know, like I said, he doesn't want to sacrifice his country to mass migration and globalist policies and free trade and multinational corporations, according even to the neocons, who have heavily criticized Tucker Carlson in the past for interviewing this guy, that, you know, no, he's not a real conservative like us. No, he's everything a conservative should be in many ways.
After we last spoke to him, we returned to Hungary to sit down with Prime Minister Viktor Orban and ask him what exactly is happening in Ukraine right now. Here's what he said.
So in the United States, the view is that Ukraine is winning this war. It doesn't sound like that's true.
No, it's a lie. It's not just a misunderstanding. It's a lie. It's impossible. Everybody who's in politics and understand the logic, the figures, the data, no way.
Why is it impossible?
Because that way, the poor Ukrainians die every day.
Yes.
Hundreds and thousands, you know. So my heart is with them. So it's tragedy. It's tragedy for Ukraine. But they will run out earlier from the soldiers, number of soldiers, than the Russians.
True.
What finally will count is boots on the ground. And the Russians are far stronger, far numerous, more numerous
There's more
than the
of them.
Ukrainians.
Many more.
So this strategy, what we are just supporting, is a bad engineering of the strategy.
So if the Biden administration
And that's why I've said you shouldn't just keep this war going forever, right? What's the strategic objective here? Oh, like literally, you know, they call us such extremists because we're America first. Their idea with Ukraine is basically to sacrifice every last Ukrainian and make sure that whole country is wiped out before we, I don't know, negotiate with Vladimir Putin. It's totally reckless and psychotic, and Viktor here is right, but, you know.
has said our goal is
But
to
of course, what are they going to say? Oh, he's just a Putin apologist. Yeah, because, you know, it's a known fact that the Hungarians really love the Russians, right? That's like, you know, if you know anything about Eastern European politics, yeah, Hungary is really just a puppet state of Russia. You ask the Hungarian, you're like, oh yeah, we love Russia and Putin so much. No, it's just a realistic view, okay? Hungary despises Russia largely because of past history. And I think they're justified. You know, I don't have a dog in that fight, but I think I perfectly understand why they do, right? But he just gives a realistic answer here. And of course, what are they going to say? Putin apologist. How dare you not want every last Ukrainian to die on the front line for inches of territory? How dare you do
Russia
that?
is to effect
dare you
regime
pursue
changes
something
to
reasonable?
kill Putin and take him out of power.
You know, they misunderstand probably the Russians. You know, to understand the Russians, it's a difficult thing, especially if you have an ocean between you and Russia. So when we speak about politics, I mean Westerners, what is the focus point of our conversation? The focus point is freedom. How to provide more and more freedom to the people.
Yes.
When you speak on politics in Russia, this is not the number one issue. The number one issue, how to keep together the country, because the country is very big. And there's a privilege of the question how to keep together the country and not freedom. Freedom is just another issue, second, third, whatever. First, keep the country together. And that's generate a different kind of culture and understanding of politics. That's create a kind of military approach like
Yes.
they have. Always on security, safety, buffer zone, geopolitical approaches. It's not our culture, it's a different approach. It's legitimate to have that because it's their history. But we have to understand that we cannot beat them as we do just now. It's impossible. They will not kill their leader. They will never give it up. They will keep together the country and they will defend it. We finance more, they will invest more. If we send more technical equipment, they will produce more. So don't misunderstand the Russians.
So they're not.
Yeah, how dare he have a realistic approach towards peace and, you know, just understanding realistically how the conflict's going to go? No, don't you get it? You're a Putin. If you don't want to sacrifice every single fighting age man in Ukraine and make sure they all get killed in the war for like 10 years on end to ultimately still lose the war anyway, you're a Putin apologist. You just want Putin to win. Yeah, sure. I'm sure that's what it is, right? Hungary, who borders Ukraine, I'm pretty sure, definitely just wants Putin to take all of Ukraine. It's not just because he has a reasonable approach to it that actually makes sense and isn't based on delusion or idealism. Oh, we're going to take back Crimea and overthrow Putin, right? No, surely, folks, it can't be that, right? It can't be that. Yeah, he makes a lot more sense than most of NATO. But
Kind of get sick of Putin and throw him out.
Come on, it's a joke.
What would happen if the West succeeded in killing Putin? What would happen to Russia and its nuclear stockpiles?
Okay, so that's okay. May I recall one of my experience?
Yes.
So I was prime minister exactly at the time when the change happened in Russia, Putin after Yeltsin.
Yes.
Yeltsin was very weak and getting weaker and weaker. And I do remember the fear of that time here in Hungary and in Europe as well, whether there will be a new leadership or not. So the real fear here was that there will be an anarchy in Russia.
Yes.
Putin is out and no new guy who is coming in strong enough to keep together the country, the nuclear arsenal and the army control and so on. So everybody was happy when realized that after Yeltsin, Putin come in and started to control the military and the Russian power as a leader. So everybody was happy. I do remember that. So now Putin is in power for long, long years. we forgot about how dangerous when there is no strong leadership or
True.
interregnum in Russia.
True.
The interregnum is the worst case possible. So,
But that is our goal. That is the goal of the U.S. State Department.
yeah, but it's a mistake. If this is the
Real.
goal, it's a mistake.
Real.
It sounds very dangerous.
It's more than dangerous, Okay, if to sit in Washington, safe United States, is a different feeling than to sit here in Budapest. Ukraine
Yes.
is next door country, So what's going on there could have an immediate impact in 24 hours here in Hungary and so on. When I was very young, 86, if I remember well, there was an explosion of the nuclear power station in Ukraine by accident.
Yeah, sure. No.
Yes.
And it infected us immediately. So if there is an escalation in Ukraine,
Chernobyl polluted.
Chernobyl, yeah, that could have an impact on us immediately. So it's Washington is far away, Russia and Ukraine is close. That's the Hungarian approach.
So, given the
So that's another important point he makes. The guy's just brilliant, okay? The official policy of Washington is regime change in Russia. They rooted for the Wagner Group. Biden rooted for them, okay? Lindsey Graham, on the Republican side, went out openly and said that we need regime change in Russia. He openly called for that, okay? So consider for a moment what that means. Because the idea that if Putin were taken out in Russia, that they would just be replaced with some Western-friendly, democratic, nice guy, that's not going to happen, folks. That's not going to happen. Everyone who theoretically would be lined up to replace Putin in terms of his line of secession is actually far worse and more brutal and crazy, quote unquote. Putin, comparatively speaking, is actually a moderate when it comes to Russian politics. The Wagner Group, have they been successful? Which all these idiot liberals and neocons were both cheering them on. The Wagner Group were the same people a few weeks before they were calling crazy war criminals, right? You want some psychotic, Eastern European mercenary group to be in charge of the world's largest nuclear arsenal? Okay? You do not want to see Russia devolve into instability or civil war. You don't know who's going to have control of those nuclear weapons. You don't know who's going to have control of any of it. And, let me just say this, too. The last time Russia had a civil war, how did that end? Okay? How did that end? But this is the Washington policy. It is reckless. It is ridiculous. And again, he has a more reasonable take on our foreign policy than Biden and Lindsey Graham do.
manpower imbalance between the Russian and Ukrainian armies and the attrition of the Ukrainian army, hundreds of thousands dead.
And many Hungarians as well. Nobody knows it. But we have a strong minority, more than 150,000 people in the territory of Ukraine, which was earlier part of Hungary. So it's a historical community living there. They are part of the Ukrainian state, and they are conscripted now to the army. And they die. They fight for Ukraine, and Hungarians, soldiers dying for Ukraine as Ukrainian citizens. So we lost, Hungarian nation, we are losing lives daily as also.
At a certain point, they're going to need more men. They're going to need more soldiers. Where are they going to come from?
That's the most risky question.
Good question.
So if any Western country would send any boots on the ground, that would mean a direct war between the West and Russia. And we are in a third world war immediately. So it's a very dangerous moment now.
That's obvious to you.
Absolutely. Not for me. Everybody on the street.
Yeah.
All the ordinary citizens are aware that we are living in a very dangerous moment.
Yep.
So the third world war couldn't knocking on our door. So we have to be very, very careful. And that's my message always to America as well at NATO summit. Be careful with that.
And what kind of response do you get when you say that?
They are bigger, therefore they are more clever. So that's always the case.
So they don't listen to you.
We can say in that way also, yeah.
I have to ask you about Nord Stream. So it seems very obvious that the Biden administration blew up Nord Stream, either directly or through proxies. I've never heard anyone dispute that, really. How is Western Europe, and Germany in particular, the biggest NATO member in Europe, not saying anything about this? It seemed, that just crushed the German economy. Why don't they say a word about it?
So when it has happened, we commented it as a terrorist attack.
Yes.
It was rejected in Germany and in the West. It was not a terrorist attack. It was something, you know. So that's a kind of evidence of lack of sovereignty. But it's the job of the Germans. I would not like to criticize them. What we Hungarians did immediately, we made clear that there is another.
Scuffed Ryan Gosling puts it perfectly. By the way, guys, if you do want to super chat tonight to support the show, I will read these, intermittently through all of our stuff. But he says it perfectly. He says, Hungary would be one of the first countries wiped off the map during World War III. America would be the last. Hungary doesn't like Russia, but that's why they oppose this madness. And that's exactly true. And that's what I'm saying. People are going to say, oh, Viktor, it's Eastern Europe. They just like Russia. Okay, folks, let me, again, if you're totally ignorant to this history, the Hungarians hate Russia. Okay, for reasons I get it, right? That's not what this is about. That's not what this is about at all. It's about exactly what Scuff Ryan Gosling says. It's about winning a reasonable policy that doesn't drag the world into World War III. And because America, again, we're so idealistic about everything, I guess that's how it is.
The pipeline, not just Nordic Stream, but there is a southern stream coming gas from Russia through the southern corridor. Turkey, Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary. And together with the Serbian Prime Minister, President, we did very clear that if anybody would like to do the same thing with the southern corridor as it was done with the northern one, we consider it as a reason for war or terrorist attack, and we will immediately react. So don't do that. Probably you can do it with the Germans, but you can't do that with this region. That was very much clear.
Do you think people understand that?
I think so.
You were not speaking to the Russians when you said that.
On that subject.
Yes.
It's a Hungarian issue, it's not a Russian issue.
Right, but when you said to the world, don't commit an act of terror against this pipeline, you weren't speaking.
It was not addressed to Moscow, no.
No, it was not, right. So if you were in charge of NATO, if you were, say, Joe Biden, what would your next move be in the war in Ukraine? What would you do?
Peace, immediately. Call back Trump. That's the only way out.
Call back Trump.
Call back Trump.
Based.
Because,
Let's go.
You can criticize him for many reasons. I understand all the discussion, but, the best foreign policy of the recent several decades belonged to him.
Big endorsement. Let's go.
He did not initiate any new war.
True.
Yes.
He treated nicely the North Koreans and Russia, even the Chinese, He delivered a policy which was the best one for Middle East, Abraham Accords.
Yes.
So that was a very good foreign policy. He's criticized that he's not educated enough to understand the world. But this is not the case. Facts count. And his foreign policy was the best one for the world in the last several decades I have seen. And if he would have been the president at the moment of the Russian invasion started, no, it would be not possible to do that by the Russians. So Trump is the man who can save the Western world and probably the human beings in the globe as well. That's my personal conviction.
Can I ask you, just to skip around for 1 second, about the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Days before that invasion at the Munich Security Conference, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, said to Zelensky at a press briefing, we would like Ukraine to join NATO. Now, Ukraine joining NATO obviously cannot, is a...
It's a long story. When the idea of membership of Ukraine, NATO, was raised, it was in the summit of NATO, Bucharest, 2007 or 8. Russia was not strong enough to stop it. So there was a real chance at that time to integrate the Ukrainians into NATO. But it was rejected. There was no agreement among the big Western countries to do so, so it was postponed. But after 2 or 3 years later, the Russians became stronger and stronger and stronger. And now they are even stronger. So we missed the historical opportunity to do so. And this window of opportunity is not open anymore. So we can't do that. So we can't afford to have that long borderline between Russia and Ukraine, who belongs to NATO. That would mean immediate war danger to all of us, even in Washington. So it's dangerous even for the United States. It's not just dangerous for the region, but even for you, for the families.
Because it could provoke a nuclear
So, So it's not a realistic proposal at this moment. So forget about it. We should say just the opposite. We should make a deal with the Russians on the new security architecture to provide security, sovereignty for Ukraine, but not membership in NATO.
So why, and that
There you
I
go.
think your view is shared by many sober people
There
who
you
watch
go.
this. So
True.
why would the vice president say something like that at a moment when there were Russian troops massed on the Ukrainian border?
You know, it's difficult to follow the mindset of a big power like you are. So it's a different approach to everything than the approach of a 10 million people of Hungary with the historical experience, knowing the Russians better than you know. You always think that you know better because of the Cold War, but it's not the case. You should
They never occupied Washington.
yeah. You should ask us.
True.
How does it work? What is the way of thinking? What is the cultural context?
So back to the piece, if you were in charge, or if Trump were to win in 2024, how would you approach that? What would it look like, the settlement?
First, you should admit, probably publicly acknowledging, that the key is in your hand. So if United States would like to have a peace, next morning there is a peace.
True.
Because it's obvious that the Ukrainians,
We're the only reason Ukraine is staying in the fight, and then the question is for how long? Like, are you just going to keep funding them forever until every last Ukrainian is dead? And then as Tucker brings up, okay, what happens after that? What happens when you literally throw all their guys at the front line? Which, you know, it's hard to get accurate statistics, but if I were to take a wild guess, I would guess the casualty rate's very similar to, say, like a Vietnam, where, you know, the Russians, yeah, they're not advancing the way they want to be necessarily, but I'd have to imagine the kill ratio is pretty strong there, right? It's probably a lot more Ukrainians dying in your average battle than Russians. That's how these sort of small dog versus big dog conflicts go. So what happens when the Ukrainians run out of soldiers? Well, I mean, there you go. And then arms, the only reason they have arms is because of us in this case. So it's true, the key is in our hands. We don't want peace. Biden doesn't want peace. They've said that openly, because when reporters ask, you know, well, Biden is Biden, but when they ask, you know, Biden's ministers and all that stuff, hey, what is the strategic objective in Ukraine? They'll say, well, Putin needs to leave, right? Just resist Putin. It's not coherent. And the fact that it's not coherent means they want to just keep funding and throwing guys at the wall forever. And that's reckless. What's the point of that? What is that going to achieve? Nothing. Besides probably the total destruction of Ukraine and then Russia inevitably winning anyway. So,
poor Ukrainians on their own, they are not competitive in this war. So if there is no money and there is no equipment from the West and especially from the United States, the war is over.
Yes.
The solution is in your hand. Is in the hand of your president. The present one or the future one. But you will solve it. The United States can do it. Nobody else.
and by the way, not just, you know, something he didn't mention is that the United States has actually actively stepped in and stopped peace talks, right? I think it's called, which accords? The Minsk Accords 2, I believe they were called. You can research this. Zelensky was elected in Ukraine because he was the guy who said he was going to sign them and resolve a permanent peace with Russia. Probably not permanent, but, you know, for the next decade or so, a peace with Russia, okay? It was on the table. Putin had signed it. Zelensky was ready to sign it. Got a call from the United States saying, do not sign those accords. Even in the beginning weeks of this war, right? Russia was already ready. They were saying, okay, let's work this out. This doesn't have to go this way, you know? Zelensky, and then Biden actively stepped in and told Zelensky, do not negotiate, no peace with Russia, don't do anything, right? Don't answer their calls, don't allow any of it. So even when Ukraine has pursued peace, the US has stepped in and said, do not pursue peace. So it is absolutely true. The entire thing is in our hands, even down to the idea of the peace talks themselves, because people always come to me saying, why should the Ukrainians accept peace? Blah, blah, blah. You think they want their country to get conquered? Well, actually, the Ukrainian government has been ready since the start of this to broker out peace, but the US is calling them saying, don't do it. Okay, so why should it be America's decision whether or not Ukraine wants peace or not, right? You think America, you talk about we want to stop Putin's, advance and influence and all that. And then you as America say, hey, we as the Americans who don't have to sacrifice anything towards this besides our tax dollars, it's actually our decision whether or not all these fighting age Ukrainian men go and die in resistance of Vladimir Putin. That shouldn't be Ukraine's decision. That's exactly what we are saying, actually, as Americans.
It's not the solution for the Ukrainians. Of course, it's about Ukrainians. They cannot be neglected. They must be involved. But the real factor is not Ukraine. The real factor is intention of the United States.
Yes. So policymakers in the United States have been talking recently about taking Crimea, including the Russian port, away from the Russians. Is that a realistic goal, and what would happen if we tried?
It's totally unrealistic. No way.
That's not a wise.
No. It's not wise. It's not realistic. It's out of question.
Last night we stood here and you had fireworks over the city to celebrate the founding of the city, of this nation, St. Stephen's Day, and you had about 10% of your entire population standing outside cheering, and they all seem to be happy to be Hungarian.
Oh, but I'm sure it's just an authoritarian dictatorship, though, right? They're just being forced to be there. It's like North Korea, where they're all like, "Oh, supreme leader, you're so good, supreme leader." I'm sure that's what it is. Definitely, folks. It's not just that he's popular and Western liberals can't understand why a guy who respects God and nationalism and family and tradition and conservatism is so popular in his country, right?
How do you get a country that's grateful to be Hungarian and identifies?
It's an ancient nation first. The country was established 1,100 years ago. So we are a historical nation, using the same language, no relatives, nobody speaks the same language around us. Germans and Slavic, no Hungarians. So therefore, to maintain the language, to maintain the culture for this country is a big achievement by itself. So we celebrated, even yesterday, that we did it for more than 1,000 years, that we are still Hungarians. And to be Hungarians we are very proud of it. We love the nation, we love the country, and we are proud of it. It's not very much mainstream thinking, political thinking of today Western societies, but in Hungary we are still very patriotic and Christian and committed to that values, not in an ideological level, but on the streets every day.
Do you think that's why you're so unpopular among the leadership in the United States and the West?
I'm not the favorite politicians of the liberals, unfortunately, but nobody is perfect,
But why do you think that is? The country seems to be thriving. That's usually the measure we use.
No, it's more about our civilization. I mean, the Western Christian civilization. Now, the main division line is not according to ideologies. It's deeper. It has an anthropological character. So on one side, in Europe and probably in your country, but in Europe definitely, there are groups of people who think that the most important thing of the world is their ego, themselves, me. This is the center of the world. The other camp of the people, the other part of the society thinks that it's not true, because there are certain things which are more important than me, than my ego. Family, nation, God. And because they are more important than me, I have to serve these higher level things. So this society has a majority here in Hungary. And the other society, which is concentrating only me, only dealing with myself, it's more westernized, dominating factor of the political life. And the governments of the West, more belonging to the first group of the people. I belong to the second one, and Hungary belongs to the second one.
Wow, guys, doesn't that sound so dystopian? Oh my gosh. He wants a stable country based on tradition and God and, identity. Oh my gosh. I think this guy's literally Kim Jong-un of Eastern Europe, guys. I know, right? Just sarcastic. Maxwell JW for $10, thank you very much, says, do you think the left's attempts to lock up Trump shows they're worried they won't be able to fortify the polls like in 2020? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's quite obvious. Whatever their angle here is, I think realistically what they're trying to do is hopefully, because I think they're going to get a conviction out of DC or whatever it is. I don't know what's going to happen or what ends up happening, but, you know, I could see it being the case where Biden, you know, tries to make some type of deal saying, hey, if you, I will pardon you if you drop out of the race, right? Like one of those types of deals. Or, you know, I could see some other funny business going on here too, because obviously, as much as I think a lot of conservatives will rally around Trump because of the indictments in rural America and stuff, and it is good, this stuff does create liability with the moderates, with the independents, right? And so that's what I'll say about that. But then also beyond that, I think you're genuinely going to see an effort by some states. And by the way, the Secretary of State in New Hampshire is already looking into doing this, which is using the indictments in court cases as a pretense to disqualify him from the ballots in certain states. So I definitely think all of this stuff is certainly possible. And on some level, yeah, they are trying to definitely screw with the upcoming election for sure. Thank you for the 10. Also thought I'd bring up that the Harrison Deal affair that got memory hold. So I actually had to look that up, but apparently Harrison Deal was Kelly Loeffler staffer who was tragically killed, murdered, I think you would say, by some driver before the 2020 runoffs, I believe. And I actually had to Google that, and yeah, I barely remember that, but that is true. That definitely did get memory hold. I wonder what happened with that. Thank you for the $10, Maxwell. I appreciate it. Again, guys, if you would like to super chat tonight to support the show, they will all be read and answered here on the stream. But with that said, let's move on here and continue finishing this
Our
up.
constitution is concentrating on the we, you know, how we are linked together, family, nation, God, what is common, you know. So we, the Hungarian nation, that's how we speak on that. It's totally out of fashion now in the Western European societies.
But why would that be so provocative to certain people in the West? I mean, different countries have different traditions. Mongolia has its own religions, language, but that's not offensive.
True.
But something about what you said is very offensive.
Because it's European
Because
and Christian.
in the Western societies, politics very often led by intellectuals. And the intellectuals like to be ideologists, a special approach from the ideological point of view. And you know, ideology is a very difficult thing because it has an exclusivity. So when the liberal says that this is the interpretation of society, it means that this is the only way to interpret the society.
I'll take a look.
If you do differently, you cannot be a good man. So we have another interpretation. We have a Christian and national, more traditional interpretation of human being and society. But they can't accept it because it's different. So we are plural, they are hegemonistic. That's the problem.
So the intolerance is baked in. It's part of
It's coming from the
ideology.
Absolutely. The liberal ideology, basically.
Fernandez sends me a $10 Cash App super chat saying, for is a CIVILWAR possible in the United States? Thank you for the $10. Obviously, YouTube, I don't endorse any of that stuff. But I will say that I think social instability and civil strife and the stuff that's defined nations, you know, since the beginning and has happened before in this country, I definitely think something certainly is possible. Obviously, we don't root for that. We don't endorse that. We don't endorse violence. But, you know, a lot of countries go through that. And of course, America, our big brag is that we only went through that once, and it was in the 1800s. And since then, we've been extremely stable in comparison to the rest of the world. But I think as you see things get more unstable and more chaotic and more divided here, yeah, the kind of veneer of American stability in the sense we have not had a single regime change truly since 1776, at least not formally. I don't think just because that's lasted so far, it will last forever. So to answer your question, Fernandez, I don't know if it's the most likely thing in the 21st century in terms of like the traditional way that people think, but I definitely wouldn't count it out at all. I think that, you know, that type of stuff, it can happen in any country, including the United States, if we're not careful. So thank you for the 10, and I definitely do think it's possible.
You know, liberal originally meant freedom, but now in Europe, liberal means that you are enemy of the freedom, because you are hegemonistic request on society,
that is a yes.
on values, yes, and the concept of human being as well. So liberals are against freedom. That's how we see them.
I've noticed. I mean, I don't live in Hungary. I can't assess it. I can assess your media landscape, which is much freer than ours, much freer, much more diversity.
I have to fight every day.
In the United States, right? The people who run our country don't. Virtually every media outlet is on their side, reflexively. And yet they describe you in the United States in the media as a fascist. And the Biden administration seems to believe, the State Department anyway. The U.S. is the biggest, most powerful country in the world. Are you worried about being crushed by the United States?
It's dangerous, may I say. So we should not neglect the importance of that fact. When the United States administration does not like you or consider you as an enemy or
I was genuinely concerned about the CIA in I'm not going to say anything else. But he got reelected, so
or having
very good. The CIA never does anything wrong. I'm not suicidal.
It's dangerous in international politics, So you are powerful, still number one power of the world. So if you criticize somebody, we have to be very cautious how to deal with that. And now the Democratic administration does it regularly. So we have to be clear here that this is not the voice of America, it's the voice of the administration of the United States. Not all Americans has the same approach as the government. Like the Republicans, who are far closer on value basis to us. The previous president is friend of Hungary on the value basis, historically and wholeheartedly. So it's a real friend. So don't make a mistake to consider United States equal to the United States administration.
Yes.
And I think that difference is important because you have competition, a political system based on competition, and hopefully Trump will come back or Republicans will come back.
Let's go.
And the relationship will be again very good. But now it's absurd. Can you imagine that United States government deleted the agreement between Hungary and the United States on double taxation, but they still have the agreement between Russia and United States?
And that means that American citizens, for those who don't know what this is, American citizens who live and work in Hungary have to pay Hungarian taxes to your government, but also full federal taxes to the United States.
But the attitude is such. We are a member of NATO. We are ally to the United States.
Are you serious?
And we are worse treated than the Russians, What's that about?
What is it about?
I cannot believe that. If you work in another country, you got to pay Hungarian taxes. Okay, it makes sense. If you are a U.S. citizen, like you could be one of the U.S. citizens who was born in America and were there when you were a kid, but you haven't lived there for years. You could be actually an immigrant to Hungary, let's say. You have to pay U.S. federal taxes. Unbelievable. Okay, frankly, there needs to be some type of non-extradition treaty. You know what I mean? The Hungarian government, Viktor Orban, he's a G, he's a Chad. Okay, Viktor, we need some type of agreement here, where you got to set it up where it's like, you just tell the United States, okay? Let's say it's John Smith, just a generic American name. Oh no, John Smith is unemployed. Do not worry. John Smith is unemployed. He not make any money, okay? And then how's the IRS gonna? Oh, I'm just saying. All right, but that's how it should go. That's unbelievable.
It's what you just said. So it might be helpful to say it out loud. Now,
we need a
Biden administration spent U.S. tax dollars
treaty
to campaign against you in your last election. They didn't.
But you know what's crazy about that? We'll tax that, but we don't tax remittances. Okay, so when illegal immigrants and legal immigrants too come over the border from Latin America, and very often, they'll send the fighting age man there and he'll live and work and all that stuff. And then they send like half of their money back to their familia in Mexico or, El Salvador or whatever. That the IRS doesn't tax that. So they don't pay a tax on that, even though they generate that income in our country. But if a U.S. citizen goes over to another country and generates income in that country and that economy, the IRS still taxes them from across the sea. How backward is that, folks? If you come into this country as an immigrant and send your money to other countries, to other economies, to La Familia and El Salvador, like that's not taxed. But if you work in Hungary, if you take a summer job, and let's say this, let's say you're an American student, you study abroad in Hungary because it's cheaper, you go to some university there, you work a summer job at some cafe or whatever, you have to pay taxes to the IRS. Unbelievable. But, the people who hop the border and work in this country and send thousands of remittances back there, that's not taxed. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Chaotic Antifreeze for $2 says, what are your thoughts on taxation? I mean, you need some level of taxation, obviously, to live in a functioning society. But I don't think property tax or income tax are necessary or just or really, if you were to break it down, in any way essential. If I would have it where you just have kind of a blanket sales tax, right? Because that makes sense, right? If you buy something, if money exchanges hands, the government's a middleman as a sales tax. Tariffs technically are a form of sales tax. That to me makes sense. But property tax, for one, completely tyrannical, right? It's like you own a piece of property. And even, I could understand like a mortgage tax, like every time you pay your mortgage, a portion of that goes to the government. But you can have owned a piece of property for 10 years that's already been paid off. And, in theory, if you're renting it out, again, I understand that's a form of sales tax, right? Money's changing hands. But you could just own that property. That's where you live. No income gets generated off of it. And yet the government still wants like $3,000 a year in property tax just because you have a house. It's unbelievable. That's completely crooked. Income tax, same thing. I also think that's completely crooked. So I think there should just be a national sales tax and tariffs and stuff. And that's it. That's it. All forms of tax. And obviously that should be as low as we can get it. But I think income tax and property tax are completely bogus and immoral. I think they're actually definitionally immoral. By the way, the country functioned just fine before we had those. Let me just point that out.
Succeed, you won, in a fair election.
Big money.
Big money. I don't think most Americans understand that their tax dollars went to defeat you in Hungary.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not, if you respect democracy, don't you let countries govern themselves?
It's definitely against all the principles we confess.
Yes, it is. Are you worried about American control over Hungarian debt?
Debt?
Debt, yeah, debt. Are you worried that the Biden administration could potentially hurt Hungary economically? No.
10 years ago, probably that could have been the case, but today we are strong enough. No. It's not easy. It's far easier to cooperate with the United States government. It's far
Don't let
nicer
those tyrants in Washington tell you what to do, Mr.
But even
Orban.
without that, we can stand and we can survive and we can grow. Even we can grow. Not just finance, but we can grow.
So in the American media, you have been dismissed as a puppet of Russia, a friend of Putin's. I want to put on the screen a picture of you being arrested by Soviet-backed police as a young man.
That's so based. I kind of want this as a poster in my room. That's actually so cool.
Soviet-backed police.
What a
as
king!
A young man.
Look at this
country
king.
Was occupied by the Soviets, by the Russians for 40 years. So, given that, are you a bootlicker of Putin? Are you a puppet of Putin?
Exactly.
What's your view on that?
When I first time met him, come back as prime minister, we said very clearly, don't touch upon history, because the history between Russia and Hungary is rather sad.
Real.
One of the main heroic attempts of the Hungarian nation to get freedom was launched against the Habsburgs in the middle of the 19th century, crushed by the army of the Tsar of Russia. They helped the Austrians because we were in the winning position.
Yes.
And the Russians were invited by the Habsburg, and they crushed the freedom fight here in Hungary. That's first. Then they occupied us in the Second World War. And then when we tried to get rid of their yoke in 56, they crushed us again. So history is if you ask anybody on the street that any Hungarian leader who is elected freely can be a puppet of Putin or the Russians, they say it's a joke, it's impossible. Because we are a sovereign country, and even to the Russians we deliver many times that we are sovereign. So I don't take seriously that kind of accusation. But of course, I try to have a rational relationship with the Russians. especially on economy and energy. And my personal point is that without involving the Russians into a security architecture of Europe, we cannot provide a safe life to the citizens of Europe. But now everything is going against it, unfortunately.
But yeah, he's just a Putin shill. Like I said, yeah, you know, because Hungarians, definitely, they love the Russians, they love Russia, totally.
Well, Russia is hardly integrated into the security architecture of Europe. All of NATO is against, I mean, NATO is at war with Russia.
You know, what NATO does is rather strange. Because if you look at the official position of NATO as an institution, as an alliance, they're exactly saying what we said. So no involvement, and we should do as much as we can for peace. That's the official position of NATO. But at the same time, NATO says that member states of NATO should do their best to support the Ukrainians. You know, so we should clarify that what's going on, like United States foreign policy to support and finance the Ukrainians, it's not the policy of NATO, it's the policy of United States. That's a big difference.
But I mean, NATO countries now border over 1,500 miles of Russia. So it seems like the point, if you take a step back, the point of NATO is to provoke a war with Russia. I mean, that's what it seems like. What is the point of NATO?
The point of NATO is that we are stronger than the Russians are. That's very important to make clear. Okay, there is the nuclear armament,
yes,
which must be balanced, but on conventional weapon context, we, NATO, are far stronger than the Russians are. The Russians are not strong enough even to beat the Ukrainians just now, you know?
Yes.
So therefore, if somebody is belonging to NATO, member of NATO, it's obvious that we are in a secure position. Russia is not able to threat our security. It's out of question because we are so strong. That's the number one point. The second is that some leaders of NATO, some member state leaders like your president, they had a strategy to crush the Russians somehow. And the strategy was that the Ukrainian soldiers will fight and some member states of NATO will finance this fight by money and by military technical equipment. And this is the way how militarily we can beat the Russians. We Hungarians said very clear at the very first point, this strategy will never work. So this is a bad strategy. And now we have 1.5 years of the war, and it's obvious that this is a bad strategy. We have to stop it. We need a new strategy, or we should run as soon as we can for peace.
So Orban makes a very interesting point there where he says that Russia should be integrated into the security architecture of Europe. Okay? What he's basically saying there is that, you know, if you go back decades, and I've made the same exact point, there really is not a reason why Russia had to be our enemy, okay? We've pushed into this corner out of our own stubbornness and insistence and partially the ideological shift of America and all that different stuff. But, you know, back in the day, Bill Clinton, actually, Vladimir Putin asked Bill Clinton, or I believe W. Bush, one of those guys, to be a part of NATO. The United States said no, okay? And repeatedly throughout the years, as everyone is familiar with, we have alienated and pushed Russia into an isolated camp to where now, as you see it here, their only friend left is China. Okay, and you know, now you basically have a de facto Russo-Chinese alliance. And of course, people say that's inevitable because both of them are evil dictators. But if you know anything about the history between Russia and China, you know that's not true at all. Actually, part of the reason they've been kind of distant and isolated from each other the past few decades is even under when they were both under communist control. Okay, Maoist China fought border disputes with the Soviet Union because even when they were both communist, they didn't even still like each other. Okay, so they are not natural allies, regardless of what anyone tells you. They are not natural allies. But we've gotten to this point because we have willingly pushed Russia into China's corner. Out of a lot of different things, Cold War cliches, idealism, we don't like certain policies of Putin, I don't know, whatever it is, right? That's the point we've gotten to. And what Orban is essentially saying here is that this should have never been the goal, and it didn't have to be like this, and it shouldn't have been like this. And if you go back and look at the history, actually, there was a time where it seemed like this didn't have to be the case. 2016, something people forget, and something that Trump was criticized a lot in 2016 of, and this is partially where the Russia collusion narrative came from, is because Donald Trump came along with a very, very revolutionary idea, which is, why do we have to be at war with Russia? Why does Russia have to be an enemy? Shouldn't we want peace and good relations with Russia and all that stuff? Very valid question. Very valid question. But of course, the Russia collusion narrative was started by certain actors in the deep state. And next thing you know, the kind of friendly relationship that Trump and Putin somewhat did have right on the 2016 campaign trail, it is true, was not a bad thing, never materialized. And now here we are at this point where we're fighting a two-front Cold War against Russia and China, instead of doing what we could have done, which is rift Russia away from China and get Russia more on our side, okay? Which, if you go back and look at the history of this, Putin originally wanted Russia to be, right? He wanted Russia to be more of a Western power, but now he's been pushed into the East, okay? Because you might say, oh, Russia is Eastern. If you look at where the population center in Russia is, it actually is on the western side of it, okay? Russia has historically been seen as a European Western power. Pre-Soviet Union, if you'll remember, Russia fought on our side during World War I, right? They were one of the European monarchies like the rest of them. They are a naturally Western power, okay? This is the truth. Now, the Soviet Union obviously screwed that up. Communism screwed that up. But following the fall of the Soviet Union, our first priority should have been, okay, let's reintegrate Russia into the West where they rightfully belong and where they've belonged for all of world history. But instead, what did the neocons and neoliberals in Washington do? For some reason, they decided to make a pariah out of Russia. They told you that Vladimir Putin was the worst guy ever, and we pushed them right into the camp of the Chinese and to the camp they are now, where it's totally isolated. And of course, America's fighting a two-front war. Countries in Europe are bearing the brunt of it, and China has an ally of the most powerful nuclear, the biggest, I should say, nuclear arsenal in the world. Very smart, right? Very smart. But of course, Republicans in D.C. will stand and tell you, no, but the real enemy is China. Okay, if the real enemy is China, then why are you pursuing such a reckless policy where you push Russia, which, like I said, is a naturally Western power, okay? If you go back to the history, I know you're going to bring up the Cold War, but the Cold War was the deviation from that norm, okay? They're going back to the old flag and all that stuff, you know what I mean? Historically, Russia was a Western power. The fall of the Soviet Union should have meant a return to normalcy, which is a reintegration of Russia into the West, into the Western bloc and the Western sphere of influence. Instead, because of our own recklessness, despite the fact that the Soviet Union has fallen, they once again are basically reassuming that role. It didn't have to be that way. And now China again has an ally. So very smart, guys. And before you say, but Vladimir Putin, I don't like him. Okay, do you think Viktor Orban likes Vladimir Putin, folks? Okay? And let me say this too, to the people who still cling to the Cold War cliches and can't understand what I am saying because, Vince, the Cold War. Okay, if the Hungarians, folks, can get over the past, the Hungarians, all right? The Russians, raped and pillaged this country how many different times? You go ask a Hungarian on the street, how do you feel about Russia? Yeah. Let me just say, they might give you an answer that might not even be, adequate for YouTube, that could be played on YouTube, okay? They don't like each other. But if the Hungarians can say, yeah, but still we can put aside the cliches of the past and pursue a realistic and practical policy that's overall good, I don't want to hear anyone bring up the same Cold War cliches. What I am saying absolutely should have been the case. It was possible. We could have reintegrated Russia into the West, where, again, they belong. Where they belong. Russia is a Western power, naturally and historically, before that deviation from the 20th century. But we didn't do it. Let's finish up the interview.
Let's ask you one last question about Trump, since you brought him up a couple of times. You were just in an election that I know your staff was worried you might lose. There was an open question. You won pretty sizably, but it was a real election.
Oh, it was.
Did you consider at any point just indicting your challenger on fake documents charges and trying to throw him in jail? Wouldn't that have been easier?
You mean against me?
Yeah.
Okay, we have some bad chapters of our history, but that kind of civilian war, cold civilian war, was not part of our culture. So we can beat each other, we can argue against each other, but you know, to do what's going on now in some countries and even in your country, you know, to use the justice system against the political opponents. In Hungary, I think it's impossible to imagine. You know, that was done by the communists. It's a very communist methodology to do that. So in Hungary, we are all aware that we disagree on many things. Ideology, values, vision on the future, even practices of politics. But you know, we belong to the same nation. Okay.
It's true, yes, Russia is in Asia, but where's the population center in Russia? Like, yeah, it's a big country, but no one lives in most of it. St. Petersburg and Moscow are both, you know, I guess it's a little gray, but they're both in Europe, basically. So that's what I'm saying. That's why I say Russia's a Western power. I know when you look at it on the map, you say, well, that's not Western. Yeah, because it's a big country, right? They got all that territory that nobody lives in. Russia's core is Moscow, St. Petersburg. That's the core of the Russian population. That's like where true Russia really is. Both of those places are in Europe, okay? Geographically, they're in Europe. Even culturally, you can kind of tell. It's not that different from Eastern Europe. So Russia is a Western power. Yes, it's a very big power. It's kind of like always been, you know, kind of diverse geographically, ethnically, all that stuff. But when you look at the core of Russian history, who they are, the Romanovs, what's the root word there, right? They are a Western power. They historically have been. The point should have been to restore them back to that. You know, you say Russia's in Asia. Do Russian people, I should say the majority of the Russian population, do they look very Asian to you? Or do they look very European to you? Okay, let me put it that way. Does Vladimir Putin look Asian or European? Do the Soviet guys from the past look Asian or European, right? Yes, it's it's always been kind of imperial, you know, but ethnic Russians are Europeans. Right? It's a European country, even though, yeah, it's very big. It borders Mongolia and China. Russia is a European country at the end of the day. So it is a Western power. It is a historical Western power.
But what is the final sense of this argument and competition? To unite the nation, yeah? To provide a better future. So you can't say that I will kill you or I will send you to the prison, and you know. If you follow that track, no chance to unify the nation. If the nation is not unified, you can't run for big purposes. So competition is okay, but it must be fair, legally perfect. Otherwise, you can sacrifice your country and the future of your country for your personal success, which is not acceptable, at least not in Hungary.
Based.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much.
All right, folks, there you have it. There's the Viktor Orban, Tucker Carlson interview. So what do you guys think? Do you guys see, like, you know, a right-wing fascist dictator, or do you see a good guy who's, you know, he cares about his country? He's very paternalistic about it. He's trying to do his best. He loves God. He loves his people. He loves Hungarian history. And he wants to keep it that way, you know? I don't see a very threatening guy to me. I don't see some angry psychopath. I hear a very level-headed guy, Western educated, by the way. You can tell he speaks English. And you know, I don't see why America has to be so opposed to this guy. In fact, I think there's a lot we could learn from the guy. Now, again, is Hungary a perfect nation? No, it's not. I never said it was. But there are things that he does better than most American politicians. Why can't we learn from them? You know, it's true. It's true. And like I said, because they did talk a lot about foreign policy in that speech, if he, as a, you know, you want to bring all this like Vladimir Putin derangement syndrome to the table, he is Hungarian, okay? So, because he virtually shares the same opinions as me on this Russia-Ukraine stuff, and we've tried to explain it, and some people don't get it. You say, Vince, you just don't get it. Putin is a dictator. You know. Okay. you know, I frankly, I never said he wasn't, but I'm talking about how do we act in our country's best interest and really the world's best interest, right? But all that different stuff. He, you know, you want to call him, what are you going to call him, a Russian apologist? He got arrested by the Russians in the 1980s for protesting against Russia. Like I said, his country, his people, not particularly a fond relationship there. But if you can put that aside and say, here's a realistic way to approach this issue, which I agree with, I don't want to hear those excuses from America. Truly. All right, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, it is 9:17 p.m. We will do Q&A, reading chat, and super chats here probably until about 9:30, 9:40 or so. I don't know. We'll see how long it goes. But yeah, we're now open for our super chat. So questions, comments, anything you want to be sent in, read, and answered, feel free to do so via these super chats. And as usual, your super chats are the best way to support the show, support the content, and have your questions and chat read on the stream. So here we go, folks, and we are currently monitoring. You want to do a storm watch on the stream? Let's see where the storm is, okay? We got Hurricane Brandon 2. Actually, I forgot. We got to do that. We got to do the poll on what we're naming the hurricane, okay? So, hold on. Let me make a poll in the chat so we can, because we need to decide this. I need a name, okay? So, last year we called Ian Hurricane Brandon. Now, I feel like Hurricane Brandon is just perfect. You know, it works. It's funny. So we could just call it Hurricane Brandon 2. But, you know, we could also be more creative. So let's see. What should we name the hurricane? All right. I'm making the poll right now. All right. Option 1. Hurricane Brandon 2. Which is kind of funny. Brandon 2. Brandon the sequel. But we could also do Hurricane Viktor Shi. Do that. You know, he's another bad guy on the channel. Evil thevincedao, literally. Let's see. What are some other names? I heard it's now a himicane. That is kind of funny. Okay. We could do Hurricane Kamala or Hurricane DeSanctimonious. Or, you know, Hurricane the Sanctus. Okay. Hurricane the Sanctus. There we go. All right, here you go. We got the poll, folks. Okay, it is now open, so everyone go vote. What should we name the hurricane? Hurricane Brandon 2 is option number 1. Hurricane Viktor Shi, Hurricane Kamala, and Hurricane DeSanctus. All right, so here we go. Let's everyone go vote right now, and let's get this figured out. I still like Hurricane Brandon, to tell you the truth. Like I feel like it's funny, you know, Hurricane Brandon 2. It just rolls off the tongue. It works. But currently, Hurricane Kamala is winning, which is very interesting. Okay, Hurricane Abrams. That's so funny. I can't believe it was named Hillary. It was pretty weak. That is kind of funny. Yeah, the first hurricane to ever hit California was named Hillary. That did crack me up. I have to say, quite a degree. Vince, you got to get Brandon Herrera for an interview. That's actually a good point. We should bring him on for an interview. Again, guys, open for super chats, questions, comments, anything you want to send in. Feel free to do so. But let's take a look. We got Hurricane DeSantis or Hurricane DeSanctus is winning. How does Hurricane Brandon only get 6%? That was actually my favorite one. No one wants Hurricane Brandon, so it's a very close poll here though between Hurricane DeSanctus or Hurricane DeSanctimonious, whatever, and Hurricane Kamala. Hurricane Kamala currently winning at 40%, so it looks like it's going to be Hurricane Kamala. But we got 20 votes, 70 people watching, so still, everyone in the live chat, be sure to go vote on the name of this hurricane, okay? Name of this hurricane, but let's take a look at the storm watch. All right, let's see where it is. I mean, I'm pretty inland, so I doubt there will be any problems, but, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll get washed away, all right? If I get washed away, I hope we're going to end up in, where should we get washed away to? We'll get washed away to Hungary, and then I'll do an interview with Viktor Orban, okay? But, all right, let's see. Hurricane, what's the real name of the hurricane? Igalabugu? Igaladalagadugu, whatever it is. Idalia Gugu. What a stupid name. Idalia. What kind of name is that? I know, like, Adalia. Isn't there a song like, hey, Adalita? What is Idalia? You couldn't come up with anything that didn't, like, a female name that's, I don't know, Idalia. What kind of name even is that? But all right, let's take a look. Okay, Hurricane Ugudabugu here has. Let's look at the live updates. Okay, it's called. We do a little bit of storm watching. We do a little bit of storm watching, folks. But let's take a look. Let's see. Let's see. All right, I don't want to do CNN, but no. All right, the CNN does have live updates. So unfortunately, we may have to support the CIA news network here, because I want to see what the deal is with Hurricane Kamala Bugu. Okay, so let's see. It's currently it's packing 105 mile-per-hour winds as of 8 p.m., already causing flooding in some coastal areas, and is expected to make landfall early Wednesday. CNN is tracking the storm's path. It's crunch time right now. We are going to be hit with a major hurricane, said Governor Ron DeSanctimonious as he urges Floridians to heed evacuation warnings. You really gotta go now. Well, I will say, I think I think that would be a good time for him to stop running for president and go be governor, but it's true. Ida Lagugu's landfall strength in storm could surge once in a lifetime levels around Florida's Big Bend region, which could be swamped by a 10 to 15 foot surge, according to the National Hurricane Center. Oh, let's see. Let's take a look. Actually, you know what we could do? We could tune into like the Fox Now live feed. All right, let's take a look. I want to see. All right, frankly, if I had better cellular reception and my data didn't suck, we could do a storm watching stream. In fact, actually, we do have a hotspot. Should we do that? All right, should we risk our lives to go to the beach tomorrow and do one of the? I'm here. I'm here in the hurricane and it's gonna flow. So, oh my gosh! Oh. You know how they always do that. We should do that. I kind of want to do that. All right, my parents are gonna be pissed at me. They're gonna be like, "Vince, what is wrong with you?" But we'd probably get a lot of super chats. We'd probably get a lot if I stood in the storm with the raincoat, with the stupid raincoat on. It was like, right now we're getting coverage of 25 miles per hour winds. I don't know. We should. I feel like we should consider this, but I don't know. We'll see. All right. We're tuning in to the Fox Now live thing. It says we'll be right back. All right. So apparently they're not even. Apparently they're not even on right now. But yes. Okay. People are saying they want me to do a hurricane stream. It would be kind of funny. Okay. Everyone's saying yes. The problem is, who would even go with me? I'm trying to think. What friends do I have that are actually good friends and wouldn't be like, no, bro, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to go home. I don't know. I'm going to see if someone, because there needs to be someone who wants to go be my cameraman too. I'm not going to go there by myself. Because what if I get like hit by a tree? Well, is no one's going to know that Vince Dow got washed away by the hurricane? I don't know. So like we need people who are down to help with the crew, and I don't know if anyone's gonna do it, to tell you the truth. I don't know. We may just go to a hurricane party tomorrow. That's the alternative that we could do. Because I've never done that. Last year with Ian, it totally missed us and nothing happened. But I feel like a part of being in Florida, I have to go to a hurricane party, Like that's just part of the experience, okay? And that will be something from my quote-unquote college experience that no one else can say. Not no one else, but a lot of people outside of this region can't say. They're like, bro, I did fraternity rush. Okay, but I went to a hurricane party. So what are you going to do about that? I don't know. This is also an option. But Hung Cow can come with you. Yeah, real. We get Hung Cow. The thing is, I don't even know if there will be reception out there when I think of it, because like I said, I have this hotspot now, so that's an option. My phone reception, I literally ran out of data. I have quote unquote unlimited data, but it's not unlimited because at 20 gigabytes, it slows you down. It's one of those stupid things. And I already ran out this month because of the internet that's not working. So I don't know, but we do have a cellular hotspot, which is an option. We want to do an IRL stream in the hurricane. But then, you know, the other issue is, like, I don't have one of these vans. You know, it's like all these news people, they have these big vans that can traverse the flood. My car is low to the ground. My car will just get washed away. Okay? And yeah, we'll make what, like 1 to 200 on the super chats. It'll be a fun day. But if my car gets destroyed in the hurricane, then, you know, that's not exactly a cost-benefit analysis, you know? Sorry to report, I don't have a big truck or one of those things. So that's the other issue, is the car, you know? Because I'm looking right now. Like, look at this. Look at this right here, okay? Let me show you. Let me show you what we're looking at. Okay?
And we did experience significant power outages across the county.
This is Pinellas County.
We expect the winds to be highest along our barrier island and coastal areas on the western part of the county. Inland areas can still experience those tropical storm force winds sustained, with gusts perhaps even as high as 90 to 110 miles per hour. This really varies on whether or not this storm wobbles as it comes in and gets closer to us. So we just
see, okay, look at this right here, right? Something like this, like one of those big trucks, you're fine. You can literally just drive through flooded streets. My car's very low to the ground. It's literally just going to get lost. Like, it's just going to get swamped, and that's not the best example. Like, it would probably make it through that. But, you know, trying to get an example, because I was looking at earlier on the screen. Okay, like, look at this. Well, actually, that's in the water.
This is subject to change depending on if the storm speeds up or if the storm extends out. We want to make sure that people
okay, like, look at this. Actually, no, that's not a good example
You
either.
can stay with family or friends outside of the evacuation area, stay in a hotel or a motel outside of the evacuation area. Plus, we also have 10 shelters that are open for free for the public to come into. We heard during Hurricane Ian that a lot of people stayed home because of their pets. Please know that we have 3 pet-friendly shelters that are open right now and will remain open through the duration of the storm. These are located at Gibbs High School.
See, I don't have, look at this. This was a Humvee. I don't have a Humvee, all right? I don't know if I have the vehicle to, like, traverse through this place.
Largo High School and Palm Harbor University.
Because, like I said, I live pretty inland. So people say, oh, Vince, just go outside. I guarantee, I not guarantee you, but I would predict it's not really going to be that crazy where I live, because I live pretty inland. You're not going to see a storm surge. I mean, who knows? I know, like, Orlando last year had Ian pretty bad, but if it's uneventful where I live, then what are we going to do? You know? I don't know. I guess, though, if it gets crazy where we live, then we can do it. Then we can do a, you know, an IRL. We're here in the hurricane type of stream. But I don't know. I don't know. You know, it's like...
We are also working with our residents who are electric dependent or have other special needs. We have 3 shelters available.
All right, this is Pinellas
to
County,
accommodate them.
Which I think is like Tampa area, right?
Have generators. We have personnel from the Department of Health there to help those folks. If you were on our registry and we contacted you, we are providing transportation to get people to those shelters. I would encourage anybody who is on life-sustaining medical equipment that doesn't have a generator plan or backup power plan at home, you can call our county information center.
Omar says, I'll drive. I have a lifted truck. Omar, don't you live in, like, California or something? What are you talking?
At 727-464-4333.
The hurricane is your ride? Yeah, real.
Okay, so Pinellas County officials there from earlier today, that was their latest press briefing. What residents need to know there? We just spoke with officials there live in Pinellas County as well. And that's kind of the thing.
See, look at that. My car is not going to make it through that thing.
Today, you've been hearing a lot. They are just saying
wait, over here. Yeah, look at that.
All of these Florida residents
my car can't handle that.
Idalia's path have heeded these evacuation warnings. And so let's continue with some of this coverage, especially there in Pinellas County. Before we do just that, take a look at all the tweets. We've just been compiling these throughout the course of the day, just with some photos, images, videos.
Yo, toll suspended till next Tuesday? Chat, we're taking advantage of this. Okay, the tolls on the turnpike are suspended. All right, where do you want to go? Where are we going? We going to Miami, boys.
Of what this looks like, how people are preparing, also the satellite images from NOAA and others looking pretty crazy as well. But like I said, we do want to...
This is Beach Bull... Oh, missed it.
Keep it focused.
Daytona Beach. Oh, Hurricane Franklin. What? What the heck is Hurricane... Well, there's 2 hurricanes? Daytona Beach. What?
Focused in the meantime just there in Pinellas County. Fox 13 Tampa reporter.
Is it on like the other
Justin
coast?
Matthews, he joins me now there from Clearwater Beach. And Justin, thanks for being with us. You know,
all right, let's see Clearwater Beach.
I think a lot of people watching this right now, they see that it is nighttime, and so now, you know, is it the calm before the storm?
Hey, Andrew. Well, it really was right before dinner time. There were a lot of people out here in Clearwater Beach kind of enjoying, kind of checking out the conditions. I know.
Yeah, true. It was such a nice day today. It was like the nicest day of the summer, okay? You know, that's crazy, though, because imagine what people did back then before we had, you know, the weather forecasting and all that stuff. Imagine sitting out one day, you know, you're like a Spanish settler in Florida or whatever, and it's the nicest day of the whole summer. You're like, wow, this is beautiful. And then the next day, you have a hurricane. Like, that's crazy. Like, people must have gotten so wrecked by hurricanes back in the day. But, all right, let's take a look.
It's really dark, but if you can see behind me, we're on the beach, and you can kind of see white caps. The waves have really started to pick up as the outer bands of the storm are making their way into our region. The weather is starting to deteriorate a little bit, and, you know, we don't usually get waves in the Gulf. For those of you who know it, a lot of people kind of compare it to a lake. So seeing these white caps, seeing the waves forming here is definitely indicative of that this storm is getting closer to our region. But take a look at, like I mentioned, what Clearwater Beach looked like earlier today, right around dinner time, when people were
what a
on the
wonderful
beach, they were with
shot.
their families,
Can't see
they were
anything.
checking out the conditions and really admiring the waves, something you don't see in the Gulf too often. And of course, there were plenty of surfers taking advantage before the sun went down.
That's where I should have gone today. I should have gone to the beach today.
There's a really narrow window you have, and that's why you see so many people out here right now, because the forecasts do a good job of telling you when it's a good idea and when it's not, if you know what you're looking for. So the surfing period, from what I saw online, is going to be from about now, if we're lucky, until dark, and then don't be anywhere near the water.
Yeah, that's good advice. Don't be anywhere near the water, especially now, because it's not a good place to be. You know, and just driving around Clearwater Beach. I mean, look, this is a huge tourist destination, and it kind of feels like a ghost town. We are in a mandatory evacuation zone. Shops and restaurants are all closed up. There are sandbags that line the entrances and to all the businesses there. So yeah, again, not a good place to be here on the beach. We are in an evacuation zone. There have been some Clearwater Beach police officers that have been going around, just kind of talking to people about the dangers. You know, about an hour ago,
This guy looks like Brian Krasenstein.
There's no traffic. A lot of people have left the area, which is good. And if you are, you know, living in Pinellas County and you do have questions, there is a 24-hour hotline that you can call, and that the number is 727-464-4333. So weather deteriorating out here, Andrew, and we're just, you know, keeping our fingers crossed that everyone's properties stay safe, really.
Yeah. Justin, I got to ask, though, I mean, you don't see any surfers out right now, even though it's nighttime, because that one you spoke with, that one you spoke with, he was pretty bullish on the waves.
Yeah, yes, he was. I mean, there were a lot, and, you know, again, many surfers taking advantage, but he did have a really good point about after the sun went down, the water, you don't want to be anywhere near it, which was, you know, a really poignant thing to say, because, again, I know you can't really see it because it's so dark out, but the waves have picked up a lot in the past hour and a half, and you do not want to be out
Someone's
there.
Someone's going to go surf in it.
Yeah, and speaking of the waves, though, what about, like, the wind and the rain? Have they picked up? How long have you been there?
Yeah, so we've been out here since about
Kermit the Frog,
I'd say. And in the last hour and a half, that's when we started to notice some more rain.
Yeah,
the
it
wind
is Kermit
picking
the
up.
Frog,
Some of those
true.
outer bands are starting to make their way into our region, and yeah, it has made the weather deteriorate. But
Yeah, no, I'm
nothing
telling you, it's literally
too
Brian Krausenstein. This is
concerning
actually
as of
Brian
now.
Krausenstein,
It is a
folks.
little breezy. It has picked up. We're getting some gusts. We saw one flash of lightning about 30 minutes ago. Nothing too concerning there. I think the sound of the waves, the crashing, that has become louder. It's it's been consistently sprinkling. There's some palm trees behind me. I don't know if you can see.
Unironically, though, I'm gonna be real. This looks like such a fun job. Okay, I've never really wanted to be a reporter, to tell you the truth. Obviously, I kind of do the commentary thing, kind of like the anchoring thing. But this is the one part of being a field reporter that looks so fun. Okay, like covering crazy events, like a hurricane, a riot, even stuff like that. That's probably such like a thrill chasing thing. Unironically, it looks fun. Okay, if I had the infrastructure to do it, I would consider it because it looks very fun. By the way, guys, the poll is saying Hurricane DeSantis wins by 29%. All right, so I guess Hurricane DeSantis is the name of this poll. So there we go. All right, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, X Hammer Thor says if you don't live and work in the Midwest and you're not a real American. So you mean like 3/4 of America is not real America? What are you talking about, bro? What are you talking about? All right, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, if we got no more super chats, I'll probably wrap it up tonight. But I'll actually last call for super chats. So we'll go till like 9:40. Last call for super chats. Anything you want to send in tonight, folks, feel free to do so. I don't know if we'll be live tomorrow. Clearly, the hotspot has worked. Oops. Okay, my bad. Clearly, the hotspot has worked. So, but I don't know if the power is going to be out tomorrow. It probably won't, realistically. I mean, like I said, I'm not on the beach. Probably will be fine, but, who knows? Who knows, to tell you the truth. And like I said, if we can pull it off somehow, maybe I'll do a live stream of the hurricane. If I do, okay? We're not doing that for free. I expect everyone tonight who's saying go do the hurricane. If we do that tomorrow, I expect your super chats. I really, I don't usually get aggressive about them. But let me just say, if we're gonna stand out there and be like, oh, we're in the hurricane, then the least you can do is send like $5. Okay, the least you can do is send like $5, truly. But we'll see. I don't know if that's gonna be what we do. Oh, now it's Hurricane Brandon. Now Hurricane Brandon is tied. There's no... Okay, well, then it's tied between DeSantis and Brandon. All right, everyone who's not voted in the poll, go vote in the poll. Be the tiebreaker right now. Is it going to be Hurricane Brandon 2, or is it Hurricane DeSantis? All right? We need we need the final here. We need the final, all right? Live stream hero cam. Real, literally. Literally. You in Florida, dude? Yes, I am. Well, yes, I am. I am in Central Florida. Well, I don't know if you'd call it. It's like North Central. It's on the border. It's between the two. You could consider it either because I'm less than 2 hours from the state line. So, this is true. All right, apparently it's Hurricane Brandon 2. Well, that's the name I always wanted, so there we go. I'm ending the poll here. We're stopping the count with 69 votes because we're going to stop it at exactly 69 votes. Nice. Hurricane Brandon 2. It's the final name of the hurricane. All right, it wins. Look at that. 27% to 26%. Okay, it narrowly edged out. Okay. This is like a metaphor for the election itself, okay? Brandon narrowly edges out the Republican by 1 percentage point. At the very end, DeSantis was leading, and then that's what happened. So I guess this is the case. All right. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to leave a like on the stream before you go. Like I said, not sure what the schedule will be, but we should have content at some point for you tomorrow. And until next time, Alpha Moves only. God bless. Have a very good night. And peace.